Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 295. Reader and Writer. Part 1. It was noon when the march began. It was an army containing 200 elite incarnations. As numerous constellations watched, Li Hyansung raised a horn at the front of the army. The item Battlefield Horn is activated. The morale of the allies has increased significantly. The attack power of the allies has increased slightly. As expected of Han Suyang, she had already prepared such consumables. Li Hyansung blew the horn once again and the incarnations cheered. Everyone seemed excited. Xin Yusung glanced at me and spoke politely. Thank you for saving me last time. Ah, yes. It was nothing. Xin Yusung smiled at my words. She was raised to be kind and polite, unlike Kim Namwon. I glanced to the side and saw Han Suyang making an unknown smile. I don't think Xin Yusung grew up like this because someone raised her. Yusung was originally a good kid. Kim Dokja SSI is also participating in this scenario? Nope. I'm not qualified. Ah yes. I'm sorry. I heard that we can get a giant story if we clear this scenario. I didn't feel regret. It would be great if I could acquire Liberator of the Apocalypse Dragon here as the second giant story. However, this wasn't the direction I wanted. The giant story I wanted was in the third round. In the front, Li Xiaohua was wiping sweat from Li Hyansung's forehead. Li Hyansung smiled weakly. I'm nervous. I don't know if we can do it well. It's going to be fine. We've done a good job so far. I could hear Kim Namwon and Li Jiahai's voices behind me. Hey, Li Jiahai. What will you do at the end of this scenario? Well, it is clearing another scenario. How long will you only clear the scenario? Sometimes we need to have some fun. Come play with me after this scenario is finished. Kim Namwon was watching Li Jiahai's eyes while wearing the coat I lent him. As I told him, gloves were on both hands. His hair was still white and there were bandages wrapped around his arms. Then thunder struck in the sky. The armies of the nebulae participating in this scenario were approaching in the distance. They were nebulae I had already encountered and nebulae I hadn't met. Han Suyang's companions were strong enough, but the number was inadequate to deal with all the enemies. Han Suyang stepped towards Li Hyansung and declared, "We have only one objective. It is to liberate the dragon sealed in the sphere." Her white coat fluttered as Han Suyang kept speaking. As you know, liberation the Apocalypse Dragon will destroy the peninsula. However, as long as we have completed the clear conditions, we can move on to the next stage. Then no one on this earth will die. The determination of the incarnations solidified at Han Suyang's declaration and they shouted again. They chanted Han Suyang's name. It was a somewhat familiar sight. All of this was once done by Yu Zhonghyuk. The 95th scenario, the second coming of the Apocalypse Dragon. This was a scenario to awaken the Apocalypse Dragon that was sealed at the time of Eden's fall. It was accomplished by collecting 5 swords scattered around the world and plugging them into the keyhole of the seal. In fact, Yu Zhonghyuk accomplished this scenario and gained the giant story. Let's go to the next scenario. Han Suyang shouted and the incarnation army moved towards the sealed sphere. However, enemies could be seen running from the other side. Take the sword. We must take the keys. Over there. Han Suyang. They were the incarnations and constellations hiding all over the Korean peninsula. They wished to acquire the story by awakening the Apocalypse Dragon. Stop them. The people beside me scattered and pulled out their weapons. Li Hyansung, Li Jiahai, and Xin Yusung ran while emitting magic power. Ha 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 ha. Come. Abyss Dragon. Kim Namwon was also jumping into the battlefield. His blackening reached the peak. The Kim Namwon of this world was different from the Kim Namwon I knew. Still, Kim Namwon tearing all the enemies approaching him was clearly the delusional demon I knew. I didn't know what terrible things he had done to reach this point. Then Han Suyang pulled out several swords. The star relics gave off a brilliant light. They were the keys to be used to clear this scenario. 4 swords. They were still lacking one to complete the key. Kim Dokja. Give me your erudite. You knew? I smiled as I pulled out a sword. The Dragon Slayer Arondite. This was the key to ending this scenario. Then send Yu Jonghyuk to the seal. I stared at Han Suyang after hearing her words. Han Suyang was smiling. Didn't I say I would kill him? Have you forgotten? I didn't like the look in her eyes. At this moment, I realized something. You killing Yu Jonghyuk is the condition for your outer world covenant. Han Suyang's eyes flashed. Yes. That's why you're fixated on Yu Jonghyuk. Quickly, give me that sword. The cold texture of Arondite was felt. In fact, I knew what Han Suyang was going to do. Holy Sword Ascalon. Thunder Sword Graham. Dragon Sword Riddle. Old Dragon Sword Nagling and the Dragon Slaying Sword Arondite. I called out the names of the swords and Han Suyang's expression strangely stiffened. There is one problem. One of the swords I just mentioned has a different character. What are you doing now? You're fooling the people. Don't talk nonsense. Let's go to the next scenario. I continued speaking, don't pretend. You don't want to clear this scenario. Han Suyang's eyes shook. Her eyes were filled with something close to madness. The 4 swords were shining white beside her. Continue. You don't want to free the Apocalypse Dragon. It is actually the opposite. You are going to seal this earth with the Apocalypse Dragon. Why do you think that? I pointed to an object in Han Suyang's hand. You have Nagling. This sword is the only sword with a different attribute. The 5 swords that made up the 95th scenario were all related to dragon slaying stories. Only one sword, the old dragon sword Nagling, was different. That sword is a failed dragon slaying sword. If you use that sword as a key, the seal won't be released. It is actually the opposite. An improper key would strengthen the seal, not release it. The seal would realize it wasn't yet time for liberation and become a bigger and stronger barrier. It would soon cover the entire planet with a seal. The time here will stop and Earth will be sealed with the Apocalypse Dragon. It will remain forever fixed in the 95th scenario. I couldn't read the expression of Han Suyang, who had bowed her head. I continued speaking. This is how you will kill Yu Jonghyuk. I looked back at Yu Jonghyuk. Yu Jonghyuk was watching me with blank eyes. As long as there was his sponsor, Yu Jonghyuk wouldn't die. Once he died, he would return again and again. However, what if there was eternal sleep in the world? An eternal sleep with no dreams and no waking up. Such a thing was no different from death. You have decided to seal Yu Jonghyuk forever in this turn. Yu Jonghyuk would be trapped in the seal and fall into a sleep that no one could wake up from. He wouldn't regress or suffer anymore. He would fall asleep eternally and a new world line wouldn't be created. This was the death of Yu Jonghyuk. It was the death of a regressor. I turned and saw Han Suyang smiling faintly. Better than expected. How did you know? I never showed you exactly what my next plan was. You didn't show me. I had seen Han Suyang's mind. I saw the world she dreamt and read the information she had shown. Obviously, almost everything was perfect. However, there was one crucial thing missing from the world. There were no signs of in your story. The end of all the scenarios. However, not everyone reached. Some stories ended without even going near. Thunder was heard from the sky to the west. Rain started to fall from the dark clouds. The voices of those shouting in the distance and the true voices of the constellations engaged in battle came out. Li Hyansung, Li Sealwa, and Li Jaihai. They were all desperate. It was in order to survive. Survive and go to the next scenario. It was Han Suyang who brought them here. Is this the conclusion you came up with? Han Suyang was now trying to finish their story. That's right. This is the end of the world that I thought of. If it was going to end this way, why did you save everyone? Why stick to such a perfect development? Han Suyang didn't answer. You betrayed them. If Han Suyang's plan succeeded, all of them would never reach the end. They would fall asleep in the eternity of this 95th scenario. Han Suyang stared at the four swords floating around her with emotionless eyes. The end of the world isn't necessarily bound to. This will make Earth safer. Neither Yu Zhonghyuk or the other constellations will know how to unlock the reinforced seal of the Apocalypse Dragon. It is a deception. Some call it salvation. Then the companions who have trusted you so far. In any case, this isn't a world that I made. Tragically, I understood Han Suyang's mind. I wanted to return to the original world because this world wasn't my world. Is this the price of the Outer World Covenant that you received? In exchange for killing Yu Zhonghyuk, you will get the power to make your own world? A powerful air started flowing from Han Suyang's body. She intended not to waste any more time. Give me the sword, Kim Dokja. This is the best way for everyone. Yu Zhonghyuk wanted it. The plagiarist who wanted to go beyond the original probably knew. To go beyond the original, you had to get out of the original. This was impossible as long as she was a plagiarist. I laughed. I don't intend to kill Yu Zhonghyuk. What are you saying? Are you going to give up on the Outer World Covenant? Of course not. As soon as I finished talking, Han Suyang moved. Yu Zhonghyuk, block it. I called out and Yu Zhonghyuk stepped forward to block Han Suyang's swords. I put away the shining arondite and pulled out another sword. It was the 4-in demonic beheading sword. An item that cut off the links between a constellation and incarnation. I focused my attention on the sword as I stared at Yu Zhonghyuk. The star relic 4-in demonic beheading sword is opening up its power. Han Suyang's eyes widened as she confirmed the energy dwelling in the sword. Don't tell me you. Death had a variety of meanings in the star stream. For example, my fate in the past. It is useless, Kim Dokja. That method. At that time, I died as Incarnation Kim Dokja, but Constellation Kim Dokja lived. Then what about Yu Zhonghyuk? Gabriel, Jophiel. Please help me. The constellation Lily Pin of Aquarius is looking at you. The constellation commander of the Red Cosmos is looking at you. I heard Han Suyang yelling, but I didn't listen. My senses were concentrated on a single black thread rising above Yu Zhonghyuk's head. It was Yu Zhonghyuk's link that I could see using the 4-in demonic beheading sword. No one in Ways of Survival had ever tried this method. However, if I succeeded, if I could break this link for even a moment, I might be able to save Yu Zhonghyuk. Yu Zhonghyuk, keep your mind straight. Now Yu Zhonghyuk had a sufficient amount of stories to become a constellation. If the connection was temporarily disconnected and he got a new story from this scenario, he might be reborn as Constellation Yu Zhonghyuk. It meant he would die as an incarnation. This way, Yu Zhonghyuk might not regress even if he died. I might be able to go back to the third round without having to seal Yu Zhonghyuk. The power of a demon king and the archangel's power was imbued in the 4-in demonic beheading sword. The opponent was Yu Zhonghyuk's sponsor, whose identity was unknown. This much power would be needed to break the link. I swung the 4-in demonic beheading sword. Then I did it again. One more time. Again and again, repeatedly striking. The huge shockwaves from the link swept away the surrounding constellations and incarnations. Han Suyang couldn't easily approach through this storm. How many times did I hit him? Finally, I heard a sound. It was the sound of the 4-in demonic beheading sword breaking in half. I looked at Yu Zhonghyuk's link that didn't have any scratches. The constellation Lily Pin of Aquarius is feeling an unknown fear. The constellation commander of the Red Cosmos is astonished. At this moment, I felt the vast universe staring at me. I couldn't imagine the origin or fathom the enormity. The sponsor of incarnation, Yu Jong-hyuk, is looking at you. Chapter 296. Reader and Writer. Part 2. Along with the extreme dizziness, it felt like the entire history of my life had been destroyed. Yu Jong-hyuk's sponsor. I didn't know exactly who it was. It couldn't be described or explained. I could just see it. It was very powerful and pure. It was like the original circle of desire. A baby's laughter echoed in my ears, and by the time I came to my senses, half of the 4-in demonic beheading sword had fallen to the ground. Yu Jong-hyuk's link wasn't broken. I had failed. I turned my head and saw Han Soo-young approaching me. Did you see it? Han Soo-young was making a strange smile. At her waist, the 4-in demonic beheading sword was shaking just like mine. You already tried it? Of course. I tried it on a much larger scale than you. I borrowed the power of a nebula. Perhaps Hyung had confirmed the reality of the sponsor in a form more clearer than me. What the hell is it? Let's see? I don't know exactly. Still, don't you have a bit of a guess? I didn't answer. Han Soo-young continued speaking, now your last plan has failed. There is no other way. As I told you before, Yu Jong-hyuk agreed to this plan. Yu Jong-hyuk agreed? You can read thoughts. Haven't you tried reading that guy's thoughts? There was a clanging sound as Yu Jong-hyuk hit Han Soo-young's sword. I watched Yu Jong-hyuk's back that was blocking the front of me. Obviously, I could use Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint Stage 2 on him now. I hesitated for a moment before triggering the skill. The exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, has been activated. Your understanding of this person is sufficient and the second stage of Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint is activated. Yu Jong-hyuk's thoughts were heard in my head. Most of the words floated in the air like dust because his consciousness was deeply sunken. One or two fell beside me like snow, and then there was a flood of heavy snow. I want to die. I want to die. I want to die. I was currently looking at the inner self of a human who was repressed in the text of ways of survival. Han Soo-young approached me as I stood there idly. Her hair grazed my chin as she reached into my coat and took out a rondite. Han Soo-young laughed as she finally collected 5 swords and stepped away from me. Yu Jong-hyuk stood blankly. Once Han Soo-young inserted all the swords, Yu Jong-hyuk would be trapped forever. Then he would get what he wanted. This was the ending of this world. At this time, I heard something in my ear. It was a very small voice. It was a very small voice among the countless voices. I placed the broken 4-in demonic beheading sword on my shoulder and ran towards the distant Han Soo-young. Her coat was crumpled by the strong grip and Han Soo-young turned her head with a frown. You still want to come? I watched Yu Jong-hyuk. I heard it clearly. I was still listening. I want to live. It was very faint, but it was a voice. He was clearly speaking. Han Soo-young threw off my hand in an irritated manner. Forget saying any good things. Yu Jong-hyuk has to die in order to achieve what you and I want. You don't know what I want. I grasped unbroken faith. The blade cried out and Han Soo-young stepped away from me with a hardened face. What the hell are you trying to do? There is no other way for you. That's right. There was no way. The Outer World Covenant meant I had no way to save Yu Jong-hyuk. There was no such thing in Ways of Survival that I read all night. There is a way. However, there was another way. Yu Jong-hyuk. At my shout, Yu Jong-hyuk ran like a lightning bolt and dealt a blow to Han Soo-young. In this short gap, Yu Jong-hyuk was able to take 4 swords from Han Soo-young. Holy Sword Ascalon. Thunder Sword Graham. Dragon Sword Riddle. The Dragon Slayer Arondite. They were all swords with dragon-killing stories. They were the key swords in this scenario. Now Yu Jong-hyuk. Free the Apocalypse Dragon. What is this nonsense? The angry Han Soo-young rushed towards Yu Jong-hyuk. I bumped into Han Soo-young's body and rolled with her. Han Suyang kicked me while shouting. There are only 4 swords. You will never clear the scenario. No, there is one more sword. I pulled out a sword. The grass-cutting sword. It was a sword obtained from Yamata no Orochi in Peaceland. I used the grass-cutting sword to kill the shadow of Yamata no Orochi, and it inherited the story of slaying a dragon. Take it, Yu Zhonghyuk. Yu Zhonghyuk received the sword that was fired with Way of the Wind. Finally, all 5 dragon-slaying swords were gathered. Han Suyang shouted, "You crazy bastard." There was a conflict between the status that Han Suyang and I emitted. I activated electrification while pouring the blue-white energy towards Han Suyang. Han Suyang was pushed by the magic power and exclaimed, "Everyone, stop Yu Zhonghyuk." Han Suyang's shout caused the eyes of the scattered party members to concentrate on Yu Zhonghyuk at the same time. I'll catch him. Kim Namwon discovered Yu Zhonghyuk first and flew. Damn, I knew you were going to betray. Li Jihai and Li Hyunsung belatedly came out. 3 of the 100 most powerful people in Ways of Survival ran towards Yu Zhonghyuk at once. Han Suyang emitted a formidable aura and screamed at me. Do you know what you're doing now? If this scenario is cleared. Han Suyang's following words weren't heard. I watched Yu Zhonghyuk's back as he headed towards the seal. Kim Dokja thought about the 3rd round Yu Zhonghyuk, who was silently going through the scenarios. The sword wielded by Li Jihai cut at Yu Zhonghyuk's back. He thought of Yu Sanga and Han Suyang of the 3rd round. Li Hyunsung grabbed Yu Zhonghyuk's wrist while Kim Namwon aimed the black flames at Yu Zhonghyuk's face. He thought for a long time about Young Hee-won and the children, Lee Gil-young and Shin Yu-sung. Yu Zhonghyuk didn't back down. His coat was torn and he moved forward while bleeding. Li Jihai and Li Hyunsung were swept away by the breaking the sky swordsmanship. He thought of Li Jihai, who called him garbage, and Li Hyunsung, who lost his casings. I wanted to see it. Thus Kim Dokja finally made up his mind. I told Han Suyang, I won't go back to the 3rd round. What nonsense are you saying? Now. I will stay here and see the ending with the people here. The end of this world wasn't the ending I wanted. It might take a very long time. Maybe I will never be able to go back. Even so, it was an ending. Secretive Plotter isn't the only outer god of this world. There will be another way to go back. Clearing the scenario and moving towards the end. Don't talk nonsense. It doesn't matter what you do. You don't know the end of this story anyway. I don't know. I spoke as I followed Yu Zhonghyuk soaring towards the ceiling sphere. I'll create it myself. Han Suyang leapt towards the sky and fired a black spear at Yu Zhonghyuk's back. I threw myself in front of the spear instead. The shock hurt, but I didn't retreat. Han Suyang's eyes were filled with a completely different killing intent. Shall we do it now? Han Suyang directly threatened me. The constellation director of the false last act is looking at you. Laughter emerged. Like me, Han Suyang of this round didn't have a sponsor. She was a constellation like me. She even held the same unbroken faith in my hand. Unbroken faith shone with a black ether that was much stronger than mine. The moment the black blade appeared in front of me, I used the white pure star energy and blocked the blow. It was obviously blocked, but the bones of my hand were distorted from the impact. Han Suyang's body started to divide. Avatar. Numerous clones leapt towards Yu Zhonghyuk and I at the same time. I moved to stop them. Jophiel's Unit 503 was qualified to stop the clones. Jophiel. However, Archangel Jophiel didn't answer. I could guess why. Perhaps she didn't like my current choice. The archangels wanted to go back to the original world. The next moment. The storied person who is loved by an archangel is triggered. The constellation Lily Pin of Aquarius feels favorable towards you. Archangel Gabriel sent me an indirect message. At the same time, Gabriel's preference scale was created in one hand. The constellation Lily Pin of Aquarius is looking at you. The constellation, commander of the red cosmos, is confused. I didn't know why Gabriel chose to help me. The only thing I was certain of was that I desperately needed her help. Han Suyang ran and shouted, "A reader shouldn't disturb me. The owner of the story is a writer. The world should end here. You aren't the owner of this story either. That type of ending is only in your world." I cut through dozens of avatars of Han Suyang and flew towards the dark clouds. Two unbroken faiths met in the air. The ether of the divine nature and ether of the dark nature clashed together and produced a strange tone. Along with the powerful explosion, my electrification was broken. I rolled on the ground while covered in wounds. Most of Han Suyang's avatars had disappeared, but she was still going strong. As the angry Han Suyang ran through the dust towards me, I shouted, "Go! Yu Zhonghyuk!" Yu Zhonghyuk's body leapt into the air and he finally reached the sealed sphere. The 5 keys have been inserted in the sealing sphere. Han Suyang shouted, "No!" 5 swords were inserted into the huge sphere. There was the sound of the keyhole being turned. Someone has released the seal of the Apocalypse Dragon. The scenario clear conditions have been met. The sleeping dragon's power was awakening. The entire sky flickered like a giant light bulb. The sky was half divided into night and day. I felt the owner of a giant story waking up. The constellations of the nebula Olympus are astonished. The constellations of the nebula Vedas have boarded their flagship. The constellations of the nebula Papyrus are wary. The messages of the nebulae were heard as the shadow of the dragon trapped in the sphere was revealed. I knew what would happen later. Not long after, the Apocalypse Dragon roared and swung its tail towards the constellations in the distant star stream. A third of the night sky disappeared. Maybe, if they were really unlucky. Kim Dokja. I turned my head and saw Yu Zhonghyuk holding the heaven-shaking sword beside me. He didn't seem to care if this scenario was cleared or not. The moment we made eye contact, I got goosebumps. Since when had the regression depression been released? The 2 eyes were staring at me with a clear awareness. That bastard asked me, "The world that you showed, does it really exist?" Chapter 297. Reader and Writer. Part 3. I couldn't find an answer to Yu Zhonghyuk's question. I didn't understand exactly what he meant. Then I heard it once again through Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Does the world where you live really exist? Then I realized what Yu Zhonghyuk was talking about. He had seen the world I lived. Hi. The 4th wall was laughing mischievously. The moment I was going to open my mouth, Han Suyang ran and struck my back, pressing me against the ground. "Yu Zhonghyuk, didn't you promise me?" Anger was contained in Han Suyang's voice. "You will die here and I will get a new world. That was the condition of our exchange. Why did you do this?" I could feel the taste of the soil as my lips touched the ground. Kim Dokja was thinking about his future plans. Once again, I didn't know what Yu Zhonghyuk felt through my memories. However, looking at his attitude, I didn't think he would give up on this life. A terrible cry came from the top of the sealing sphere. "Yuwa! Everyone flee! Quickly escape from this scenario!" The astonished constellations were escaping one by one from the scenario. Even the nebulae in the sky were being bitten by the dragon. The apocalypse was indeed such an existence. The decisive cause of Eden's destruction, the worst disaster of the star stream. In the midst of this, Han Suyang shouted at Yu Zhonghyuk. "Is it because of this guy?" Han Suyang grabbed my head and screamed. "Did this guy do something to your spirit? Didn't you want to die so badly? Aren't you tired? Don't you want to stop performing scenarios?" Every word spoken by Han Suyang seemed to pierce my chest. Yu Zhonghyuk had no expression, but I knew the life he lived. Yu Zhonghyuk of the 1863rd round was the Yu Zhonghyuk of the original novel that I knew. When my mother was locked up in prison, when I was bullied, when I sat the Sats, when I went to the army, and when I joined the company. It was the Yu Zhonghyuk I had always been watching. The Yu Jongyuk who was cold, calculating, and never gave up. I have lived watching such a Yu Jongyuk. I could live because of him. Thus, I didn't want to let him die. If Yu Jongyuk died here, the ways of survival that I knew would disappear forever. Yu Jongyuk slowly opened his mouth. I want to die. It was a clear voice, but there was a voice only clear to me. I want to live. My hand tightly gripped the ground. Han Suyang shouted, then why did you do this? Shit, why are you still alive? Somehow replace the Apocalypse Dragon's seal. Draw the sword and do it somehow. Han Suyang knew there was no possibility. Han Suyang was collapsing. Her world that she expected through the anticipation plagiarism was collapsing for the first time. Yu Jongyuk didn't answer. Han Suyang couldn't overcome her emotions as she threw me away and ran towards Yu Jongyuk. The blade of unbroken faith moved to Yu Jongyuk's neck. In the end, Han Suyang couldn't cut Yu Jongyuk. Damn it. Han Suyang's blade stopped as it touched Yu Jongyuk's neck. Han Suyang also knew. If she killed Yu Jongyuk, he would only regress. I stood up and told her, give up, Han Suyang. Shut up. You have failed. Now you need to find a new way. Shut up. What do you know? The things I did to get this far. Yu Jongyuk looked at the blade touching his neck and spoke. I want to die. I want to live. I want to finish it here. If there is a chance, like the world I saw. Yu Jongyuk's body shook. It was shaking violently from two different egos clashing. The pain seemed to be getting worse as Yu Jongyuk grabbed his head and slowly sank down. The surprised Han Suyang stepped back as a powerful shock wave burst from Yu Jongyuk's body. Han Suyang's body flew towards me and I rolled across the ground. Stories were flowing from Yu Jongyuk's body. The memories of the 1863rd Yu Jongyuk revolved in the air, floating past me and Han Suyang. In the memories, Yu Jongyuk spoke. Han Suyang, find a way to kill me. Then the Han Suyang in the memory nodded. Okay. Instead, promise me. You will help me. The promise between the two people that I didn't know about before. The seemingly perfect 1863rd turn was based on the sacrifice of a single person. In this round, Yu Jongyuk lost everything. If you carry out my plan, I can't save your sister. He lost his sister. I can't save the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint and Breaking the Sky Master. There is no time for the first Murim. He lost his teacher. Become the enemy of the world. That way, all who are hostile to you can unite. Through his own will, he became the evil of this world. In the 1863rd round, Yu Jongyuk was unhappy. He was more unfortunate than any round. I shouted through clenched teeth, Yu Jongyuk. I didn't know what to say. I could understand the mind of Yu Jongyuk who wanted to die, but I still forced him to live. It was just because of my words. Then what was right? Yu Jongyuk asked, the world that you showed, does it really exist? I didn't know if saying this would be comforting to Yu Jongyuk. I cried out with all my strength. It exists. This was the only thing I could convey to him. It was in a place that he couldn't see or hear, but it definitely existed. Then Yu Jongyuk answered. I see. Strangely, at this moment, Yu Jongyuk's expression looked comfortable. You can go back to that world if I die? No, that isn't it. Somehow, I'll find a way. You don't have to die. It might take some time, but somehow. I quickly summarized the information in his head. The best possible future was drawn in my head. The world of the third round had Yu Senga and Han Suyang and would be safe until I returned. In the 1863rd round, the 95th scenario was already cleared. There were plenty of people who survived, so if I struggled for 3 or 5 years here. I looked up and saw Yu Jongyuk looking this way. Then it is late. It was as if he knew everything. If you are here, you can't save that world. The moment I wanted to refute it, Yu Jong-hyuk stood up. The vibrations from Yu Jong-hyuk were becoming bigger and more than one of him seemed to be seen. The character Yu Jong-hyuk has reached the moment of attribute evolution. The character Yu Jong-hyuk has received a new attribute. Yu Jong-hyuk split apart with a bright light and glanced at me. I was curious about the worlds. A story overflowed and Yu Jong-hyuk was split into two people. I knew this skill. Avatar. A skill that only a person with the author attribute could use. Until recently, it was Han Soo-young's exclusive skill. Yu Jong-hyuk. Why you? Han Soo-young's shoulders shook as she opened her mouth. Her real confusion was conveyed through Omniscient reader's viewpoint. What if a person's presence could be divided exactly in half? Tens of thousands of Han Soo-youngs were talking. If one entity is divided into two exact and separate entities, which one of them can be called real? A chill went down my spine. The memories of Han Soo-young in the 1863rd round. Her figure, which was precisely divided into two, crossed my head like a panorama. It was Han Soo-young's experience and also Yu Jong-hyuk's experience. Yu Jong-hyuk split into two in a brilliant manner and faced each other. Yu Jong-hyuk said, "I want to die." Then the other Yu Jong-hyuk opened his mouth. The other Yu Jong-hyuk didn't talk but looked down at his ragged black coat. He threw his coat to the ground. "I want to live." The white coat worn by the collapsed Kim Namwon had fallen to the ground. It was the infinite dimension space coat I lent him. Yu Jong-hyuk picked it up and wore it. The white coat fitted to his body like it was made for him from the beginning. The Yu Jong-hyuk in a white coat confronted the one in a black coat. There is only one way. The two Yu Jong-hyuks pointed their heaven-shaking swords at each other. The sponsor of incarnation, Yu Jong-hyuk, is looking at his incarnation. The party members were shouting in a confused manner. What are you doing? Why did you suddenly become two? In the air, the energy of breaking the sky swordsmanship and breaking the sky swordsmanship hit each other. Oh my god, that guy. Only Han Soo-young had the same thoughts as me. One being becomes two. However, there is only one sponsor behind the two of them. This was the answer that Yu Jong-hyuk found. I shouted at him. "Stop, Yu Jong-hyuk." I said stop. The method to send me back to the third round and clear this scenario. How to die yet continue living at the same time. No matter which one survives, the other will regress. The two Yu Jong-hyuks ignored my call. I will die. I will regress. Yu Jong-hyuk knew it. He knew it very well, yet he chose this method. The story ends here. Once again, everything will start from the beginning. There was an end to this world that neither Han Soo-young or I knew. The black coat was pierced by the heaven-shaking sword. It was exactly half his memories. The numerous memories accumulated by Yu Jong-hyuk scattered in the air. The stigma regression could only be activated on one side. Thus, I could see it. The black coat Yu Jong-hyuk was the one who chose to die. The incarnation Yu Jong-hyuk has died. On the opposite side was the Yu Jong-hyuk in the white coat. Yu Jong-hyuk killed himself with his own hands. However, he was also stabbed. The heaven-shaking sword pierced his belly. The speed was slow, but he was also dying. The sponsor of incarnation, Yu Jong-hyuk, is looking at his incarnation. The stigma regression LV has been activated. Incarnation Yu Jong-hyuk has accepted the intention of his sponsor. Even so, Yu Jong-hyuk didn't die. He would open his eyes in the darkness and appear in the subway of the 1864th round, starting everything once again. This is a reward for showing your world. Some stories flowed from the fingertips of Yu Jong-hyuk in the white coat and reached me. The stories of the character Yu Jong-hyuk have been given to you. I approached Yu Jong-hyuk. The person who protected my youth was disappearing into a world I didn't know. The next round, Yu Jong-hyuk's figure started to scatter. I didn't hear any more of Yu Jong-hyuk's thoughts through Omniscient reader's viewpoint. Omniscient reader's viewpoint no longer worked for him. This person isn't a character. Yu Jonghyuk's appearance was fading into the light of this world. By the time I staggered towards him, Yu Jonghyuk had already disappeared from the world. I looked back and saw Han Sooyoung sitting down with a despairing face. You have cleared the criteria of the Outer World Covenant. The dazzling light filled the air like ashes, revealing a pale reality. In it, Yu Jonghyuk was walking towards a world we didn't know.